Hi, Evgeny. Am I pronouncing your name correctly? Evgeny
It's Evgeny.
Terekhin? Terekhin?
Well, to be precise, in Russian that would be Terekhin. So because there's a yo, basically like an umlaut with two dots. But here yo is kind of in America, it's really kind of tricky. People can't really pronounce it. So they pronounce it
Terekhin. I'm Bulgarian, so I'm up
There you
north.
go.
Terekhin.
Yes, Terekhin. Very, very well.
Okay.
See, there you go.
Let's model the pronunciation.
Yes,
Fantastic.
yes, yes,
And
yes.
how do I describe you? I mean, I encountered you on Substack, and I was deeply, deeply moved by your writing, and it felt like it had a lot of relevance to some of the topics that I explore. I'm not very narrow, but I have focused very much on the advent of advanced technologies like AI and how that's impacting human consciousness and knowledge. How do we know what we know? And I felt like your perspective, your lens was illuminating precisely where we are missing the discussion on these issues. And you're pulling in from so many areas, but I felt like the realm of spirituality, of mystery, of folk tales, of fairy tales, of anything that pertains to the world of the magical and the invisible. So I would introduce you to everyone listening right now you describe yourself as a philologist, philosopher, author,
Mhm.
translator, and woodworker. Wow.
Woodworker. I could continue. I mean, I could continue.
Yeah,
I do so many
there's
things,
more.
but it
Go
doesn't
for it.
fit in the tagline.
Yes. How did the
Yes.
writing start for you?
Oh, I started a long, long time ago. My first book were in Russian, and they're still published in Russian. But after coming to the States, yeah, I considered first translating some of the books that I had already written. But then I thought that it'd be really interesting to engage in some conversation with people that are here before I decide what it is that I want to say. So I started kind of engaging more in a conversation with real life people, and then suddenly, you know how it is. You start speaking to someone. First, you don't know what to say. You don't know what they're thinking. You know where they're at. But suddenly, when you engage, you
Yeah.
know what it is, it's like you almost attune to the right to the I don't know, to the source of the right speech and the right things to say, and then
Yes.
they come up.
So for
And
you,
so
writing sounds like it's born in the encounter between
yes, yes,
human beings. It's born in that space, that interrelational space.
yes, very much so. Yeah. And
And yeah, go for it.
I do believe that we're not producing words that we say. We actually hear them somehow. They are there all over the world. And it's the tuning that makes it possible. It's like Jesus said, from the fullness of the heart, the mouth speaks. So I don't really have anything to say until my heart is full of something. So that's how the whole thing started. I first started sharing parts of my book, 11 Hidden Gems in the Works of the Inklings, that I had started writing at that time. So I started publishing pieces on my Substack, and I saw some resonance. So that's another thing that I like. It's resonance. People started kind of responding, and so a conversation was formed out of that, and that's how the whole thing kind of took off.
Yes, I would say your pieces are very conducive to conversation. They are a beautiful bridge between the making sense part of the human being and then the mythical aspect, but they are deeply heart centered. Every time I read your piece, I do feel an expansion. I feel a warmth in my heart area. So, what you just said, that it's born in the chamber of the heart and attunement, is very much how I experience the writing. And it's inspirational, but sometimes it can be intellectually inspirational, but it doesn't have that warmth
Mhm.
that we so much need. So it's sort of like a way to,
Thank you for saying that, by the way, because that's exactly what my goal is in writing, to expand my heart. Because what happens throughout the routine that we go through every day, we shrink, everything shrinks. The whole modern life is kind of made so we become less than we are, so to say. But then, and when I write my pieces in the evening or in the morning, I feel it's like Oh my goodness, it's a time when I can do this attuning and something in me is going to unfold in kind of so when you say that you feel that, that's really like a beautiful resonance. I like it.
Yeah. And what you said about the aspects of modern life being very much a contraction, and you read something and you feel that expansion, and it's almost like a medicinal exhale, is how
Hmm.
I experience because it's a journey. I read how you write, and then the last line, there's always something unexpected about the last line, or it's a culmination, but it's a beautiful exhale. Okay, I have arrived with an important insight that is also speaking to my heart, not just to my
Well,
mind.
thank you. Thank you so much.
And I would say, I have. It's hard to select. You have so many writings, and I will include in the description so people can follow you on Substack and see what I'm speaking of, which is rare to encounter these days. This type of writing. But I've selected two pieces that speak to our, you know, inundation with AI and how that is impacting human consciousness. And the other one is more on the wound that we're all sharing and our need for safety and programmable planned future. So I think I will just start with the one that's very present for me right now. It's called Upgrade or Die: Why the Age of Neural Implants and Synthetic Art is Driving Us Back to Soil, Bread, and Church Bells. Um, so basically, here you're referencing Hans Christian Andersen's metaphor of the nightingale, and I will just quickly read a few excerpts. An emperor in China hears about a humble nightingale whose song is so beautiful that it moves listeners to tears. He summons the bird to the palace, and its song brings him joy every day. But one day, the emperor receives a gift, a jeweled mechanical nightingale. It's a dazzling and predictable, singing on command whenever the emperor desires. The living nightingale is gradually forgotten and eventually flies away. In time, the mechanical bird breaks. The emperor falls gravely ill. As death approaches, the real nightingale returns and sings beside his bed. Its living song restores his strength, and death itself flees. And this is what you base your writing on, but um, you take it to a deeper insight, which is to say that the nightingale, the real nightingale, is the undying symbol of the real. When we hear, see, and touch the real, we come alive, and death itself longs to hear the real and will surrender its treasure for a song, the song. I don't want to truncate your writing, but sometimes it's good to extract and just go with it. Um, what a beautiful metaphor for what we're missing and some of the confusion that we're
Yeah.
creating for ourselves with relying on the virtual and the mechanical to satisfy that which cannot be replaced.
Yeah,
Um,
when I read that, well, actually, I watched a movie about this Nightingale story from when I was in back in the USSR days. Because I don't know if you know, but we had a lot of like movie versions of fairy tales. So this was one of them. And uh, and what struck me about Anderson over the years, not when I was a child, but over the years, that he's able to capture absolute metaphors, there and then unfold them. It's like almost like he finds this absolute metaphor. Okay, real versus artificial. How does that play out? And then he builds the whole story on that. And this is how a lot of his stories are like that. It's like, the simplest metaphors are the most powerful. And so that one for sure is true. That,
Absolutely.
yeah, and that's the only way to accept to escape that contraction that we all feel is to touch the
Yes.
real, and we long long for
And
that.
why is it so elusive that we forget that the real is actually what will give us the treasure and meet our needs, our deeper needs?
Well, it is a question I do ask myself all the time because
Yeah.
we have so many real things around us, right? Children, my son just brought a kitten 2 weeks ago, and he's very real. very real. He wants to hunt my fingers, and but why would I choose not to touch that? That's a really kind of seems like a dumb question, but that's what I do. Sometimes I just get uh, uh, pulled into things that that seem convenient, that seem measurable, that seem like they bring something. But it's just an appearance of life, but it's actually empty inside. And by the end of the day, I sit down and I am thinking, what have I achieved? Okay, I've achieved this. I've earned so much money. I've done this. I've done this, but I feel empty. How come? And then this little kitten, we call him Weisheit, he comes and he starts playing, and all of a sudden I feel, oh, okay, I'm coming alive.
Yeah.
Or I had a call from a good friend this morning from Russia. We go back many years, and and all of a sudden I felt, oh, this is something worth living for. A good conversation with a friend who shares a lot of the things that you love. And then so we like half an hour, we just chatted about this and that. I forgot about my goals. I forgot about my tasks at hand. I even forgot to eat breakfast. So I'm kind of catching up on that. And uh I'd say there are things that
Mhm.
definitely fill us with the real, with life. And if we are aware enough, conscious enough of what's going on, we will consciously choose those things over against, that the world that pumps you up or inflates you but leaves you empty, because we can all feel like this emperor. We can all feel how emptiness feels. We know how it feels by the end of the day.
Yes.
We lie down, turn off the lights, and we're like, okay, it's been another Groundhog Day. What has happened?
Everything you described is has a spontaneous nature. Yeah.
Mhm,
It's an event that is not choreographed, correct? And yet in that story, the mechanical nightingale is sings on demand. And maybe that's the crux of what you're trying to communicate here, that anything we want to choreograph with a predictable outcome is not truly a miraculous encounter, just like an unexpected conversation or a kitten that comes and snuggles up because of
mhm.
out of their own volition. It's not something that you can click and demand and receive and guarantee. And
Yeah,
so maybe underneath is that need for a controlled experience that we're all
yeah,
falling for.
yeah. Well, I would agree with that. Yes. Even this conversation, I mean, you never told me what you're going to talk about. And I don't know, and this is the beauty of it,
Yes.
because how do we know what to talk about? I have no idea. It's just how it goes.
Hmm.
And then you hear something, you pick it up, and something gets expanded in your mind and your heart, and you know where you're being led. It's almost like a sensation of being led somewhere by the good spirit. Uh,
Indeed. So in this case, we have to acknowledge the presence of other beings.
mhm,
So it's not just you and I in this conversation. Yes, I have an intention for it. Yes, there's a thread I wanted to weave, but your words are informing where I go next.
mhm.
It's truly a dialogue.
Yes, yes, it is. And I've witnessed, I've been part of many controlled conversations, and they're not fun. They're really dead, even though they may be like, people approve of them. That's how we've always done things. Like that's how meetings are run. That's how meetings are managed. That's how but there's no following the spirit there. It's too controlled, basically.
Yeah, controlled and contrived. And I wanted to go on to the next piece that tackles AI, but I don't feel that that's where our conversation is leading. And you wrote something more recent titled The Dangerous Safety of Perfect protection.
Mm.
The soul encounters light only through its cracks. And I feel like what we have just mentioned um, leads up more organically to, I think, what you're bringing up in this piece, which is the need for vulnerability um, in the human soul. And I will just read very little. According to it's the beginning goes, according to the Orthodox priest Anthony Bloom, the goal of prayer is vulnerability. It feels counterintuitive. Most people pray for protection. We ask to be guarded from evil, hemmed on all sides, not the other way around. And yet we all know that total safety in this imperfect world is not good for the soul. If we want to experience light, we must allow our cracks to show. And of course, you referenced the Leonard Cohen, the light
Yeah,
enters through the cracks. And you also intimate that our soul craves wonder. That's why it allows the light in through the wound. It's through the wound that our true healing enters.
mhm.
So I think previous to what we, related to what we just spoke about, which is the need for control, which is derived from safety and predictability, is also this other conversation on safety, which is how do we pray? What do we pray for? When do we feel truly safe
It's a
and
good question.
saved and
And
saved?
saved, and saved, and saved. Yeah, well, it's interesting if I can go back to my conversation with my friend today. You probably also noticed that when you begin a conversation with someone, unless the person is open and willing to be vulnerable, it doesn't feel real. You don't feel the li life coursing through the conversation. It doesn't strike you. But I've met so many people who have had like very rough lives, very, but I mean, you cannot look at them and say this is like a successful person per se. But you begin talking to them, and in like 2 minutes, you realize that you are being invited into like something like a treasure is being opened, you know, because they are being real about their cracks. And surprisingly, at that moment, when you realize how a person has been wounded, deeply wounded, and they have discovered light in that wound, or they are inviting you to participate in that light with you, you feel safe. You feel, even though you may be in a dangerous, externally dangerous situation or going through some trouble, this invitation, come into my wound and share the light that I find there. It's an amazing moment when we finally that wholeness, we realize that wholeness is a deep mystery of actually allowing the light to come in through the unique shape of the wound that we've received somehow. We all have received that. We all have our cracks, whether we like it or not. And so that's where healing comes through the wound, just like it says in the prophet Isaiah that by his wounds we've been healed. Basically, he is inviting us into his wounds to become whole, you know.
Yes. And also, the wound is a very active space. It doesn't allow us to fall asleep, right? Just when there's an open wound, you have all the physical capacities of the white blood cells rushing to the wound to heal it, to rescue, to prevent infection. I think this is not just on a physical level. I think the spiritual force is mobilized to tend to this wound. And
Uh,
so it's an active space, an opening that is highlighting to us that we are in need
yeah.
of healing, that we are in need. We're not alone. We're here at the mercy of the higher principalities or other forces that by design, we
When you
have.
just said I'm sorry. When
Yeah.
you just said about white blood cells,
Yeah.
I mean the thought that just popped up in my mind is that remember that in the Gospel of Mark, I believe, when Jesus is led by the Spirit into the desert, it says, "And he was with the beasts, and angels served him or ministered to him." So that's kind of a, if you look at it mythically, uh, you are led into some desert where you have to deal with your wounds or your beasts, so to say, something that lacerates you, right? But immediately there are angels rushing to you, toward you, to heal and to fill your wound with light. And that's how you come out a different person, you know.
Yes.
So,
And to not tend to the wound or not acknowledge the wound or cover up the wound in protective layers is actually to disconnect from these angelic beings, is it not?
mhm. Yes, yes, very much so.
And I mean, but this is not finite. I think we're all walking around with open wounds all the time. The
Mm,
world makes its impact. And let's talk about the current world, the way that, the status quo, or however you want to describe it. For sensitive people, for the poetic souls, for the writers, for the artists, I think this world is making lots of impressions on all of us right now. How are you
yeah.
coping and transforming the
Oh,
energy?
oh, wow, that's a good point. Well, it's a deep question.
Yes.
But I understand one thing that's been that strikes me about the modern life, modern world,
Mhm.
is that it wants to distract you in any way possible. Oh, my phone. I mean, every time I open, there's some sort of distraction.
Yes.
Wherever I go, there's something bright in my face, and when I'm not conscious and I follow that lead, I really end up in empty by the end of the day. And so how do I cope? I cope through conversations like this one we're having now because I find my inner sensor tells me that there's life in such conversations. And something stays with you, like the aftertaste of every good encounter leaves an aftertaste. It kind of stays with you even if you're careful to remember it, of course, keep it in your memory, but it stays with you.
Mhm.
Um, um, and and um, and so I try to store those things. I try to, like for example, if I sit down and spend an hour and a half writing an article, it generates a certain feeling of expansion and light in me. And
Mhm.
I store this. I try to cherish that and focus my attention as much as possible away from those notifications, bum, 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 or turn off those notifications altogether, even though some of them are work related and I have to see them, you
Yes.
know,
Yeah.
and it's like a constant struggle. Um, and I've actually made a list of things that bring me that make me realign with this power and with this energy of life. Like for example, I noticed recently that no, actually several years ago that I really like cooking, and that's something I believe that my grandma kind of passed on to me. Back in the USSR days, I mean, I would come back from school, and she would greet me with some, French fries, her style. And I still, when I do that, um, when I cook for others and for myself, even, something changes in my energy, and I just made a note that this works for some reason. I don't know if it's going to always work, but it does.
Yes.
And so I've made like a list of those things. Another thing that's really high on my list is just driving, traveling anywhere, because the road. the road has a way of not in Houston, not in traffic, but it's
Hmm.
somewhere far away. But it has a way of changing your consciousness. You're almost like feel you're on this Tao, and it's you are on the road, but you realize that you are the road, you are the way. The Tao is in you at that moment. So there are many things like that,
Hmm.
and um, and so yes, and I would say that the only way to really survive spiritually in this contracting world is to be intentional in going to those sources of light that you have discovered that that really work, resonate.
Yes, that's why I asked this personal question, because the personal is actually universal, in that sense. And whatever you're sharing may be helpful to someone else, either with this state of overwhelm, overstimulation, or constant demand with the digital technologies that we're surrounded, but also the demands of life. Everything that just pulls us, takes us outside and fragments the attention to these little nuggets. But
Hmm.
what makes us feel whole is these moments that you highlighted, that are with our full presence and intimate with life. I mean, when you said cooking, these are the components, these are the
Hmm.
elements of life, and we become fully engrossed and present
Hmm.
with that activity. And it's creative also, so
Yeah,
many
yeah,
things
very
are
much.
creative. So I appreciate what you shared. And I also wanted to ask you, what is your spiritual outlook? I mean, you mentioned Christ. Sometimes you write about Jesus. Are you Christian? You mentioned Taoism. Are you informed by other traditions? How would you
Mm.
describe it?
It's kind of strange because I am a Christian. I go to an evangelical church, and however, I come from an Orthodox background, and so a lot of my views are, whether I like it or not, are informed by church fathers. You are in Greece. I mean, that's where the whole thing started, And never been to Greece, but I'd like to go someday. And so, and I do like other spiritual traditions. I try to be selective in like. I see what helps. I see what I resonate with. And I resonate with a lot in Buddhism and Hinduism and other traditions. I love some parts of mystical Islam, like Rumi and some other, I forgot their names. I've listened to some
Mm-hmm.
podcasts where they're shared. And but Christ, it's interesting, uh, I kind of rediscovered Christ. Uh, I think it's been happening very slowly, gradually for me, because it's just the whole idea that the invisible God, invisible Father, became visible and touchable again, just like we're talking about tangible for humans. We are flesh and blood, and we need to touch other flesh and blood. And so many people wanted to touch him, and that's how they felt life coming out of him by
Mm-hmm.
touching him, by touching him in a special way. And there's so much sacredness in that, when you're able to touch some element, even base elements, like, when I make bread out of, flour and I mix the dough, I touch all that with my hands. And I mean, on the one hand, like an atheist can say, there's nothing here but the elements. But it's not true. It's not true because when you touch those elements, you realize there's something more there because you just engage in some sacred ritual
Mm-hmm.
from the moment you start, mixing the dough, and then you see it rise in the oven, and then you eat it, and you participate, and you share it with others. You participate in the joy, and and so. even Jesus himself, when he taught the disciples how to pray, our Father, give us our daily bread. The word for daily is sometimes it's translated as necessary and things like that. But the word actually is epiousion, which I mean, I'm not a scholar, but I read somewhere it didn't exist in the Greek language back then. I don't know how it was in Aramaic because Jesus spoke Aramaic, but at least the disciples, how the disciples translated it.
Mm.
But it didn't exist. So he actually played with words on the spot, and he epi means over and above, and ousion means substance. So something that above substance. Give us the bread that when we look at it, we realize that there's something more, something above this bread. So it's kind of a interesting. I mean, Jesus was always playing with words, and he was playing with his disciples as well in a
Mm-hmm.
good way. But he was kind of saying, "What do you see when you see bread? Do you see something above it? It's in it and above it. Or when you see a person, do you see just the molecules or atoms, or this whatever, physical body, or you see a presence that permeates and expresses, manifests itself through that body? Or you look at the tree, or you look at anything, do you see this epi part, the above part, or
Mm-hmm.
not? Because if you don't, then you don't really connect with the Father. You don't really connect with Spirit either.
Absolutely. I think that's
Yeah.
very much present in your writing too. It's almost the physical is never just physical, it's always metaphysical if
Yeah.
we have the eyes and the senses to perceive it. And yeah, to penetrate across the veil and find that deeper meaning. So yeah, the bread is not physical nourishment alone. The words are living words. And
Even words are more than they seem to be. Like you say words, I say words. But if we just focus on the words, get fixated on the words, we're not going to elicit meaning. But it's something that's behind words
yeah,
that gives us a sense of meaning. So yeah, you're right. Yeah.
that's beautiful. And because we're so close to being out of time, tell us a little bit about some of your initiatives. I think you started a book club where the writing takes on a different meaning and discussion, interpersonal.
Yeah, I thought it would be another good place to have a conversation about all these things. So, we've read Tolkien's fairy tale Leaf by Niggle, and now we're on Owen Barfield's fairy tale The Silver Trumpet. And I think the next one, if everybody agrees, I really like to read the first three chapters of the Silmarillion because they're so packed with myth. Because, yeah, I don't know. We'll see how people take it. So it's also I want it to be a place of this energy of life, to be coursing through and become a place of vulnerability and a real like real change that happens within when you open up.
So it's a little bit like an online circle then, where the writing that you're all sharing, it's a departure point for people to share maybe on
Yes, yes,
where they're
welcome
at.
to. Yeah, yeah,
That's wonderful. That's
yeah,
wonderful. I will link to that initiative as well. I mean, I wish we could talk for hours, but also,
absolutely.
don't you think there's so much content right now? We're inundated with content. And
Hmm.
sometimes just highlighting nuggets and allowing people to do their own inquiry after that,
Hmm.
it can be also very useful with
Yeah,
this barrage of information and content. So I just
yeah.
wanted to touch base with you
Thank you.
briefly. And thank you for your work. Really.
Thank you so much, Lazarina. Yeah, I
Thank you,
listen to
Evgeny.
your podcast as well. Thank you so much.
Thank
Yeah,
you. We'll continue the journey. Thank you so much.
absolutely.
Bye for
Absolutely.
now.
Bye bye. See
Bye.
you.
Blessings.
Blessings.